Welcome to What's Real with Adrien live stream, where I like to take the conversation a little bit deeper. And this week we're going to be talking about inspiration, or how to stay inspired. And in order to live up to my claim of taking the conversation deeper, I'm going to try to talk about, at least part of what I'm going to talk about, is where does inspiration come from? Before I get going on this conversation, I first want to say a very warm-hearted Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I'm going to do a little honoring of that at the end of the video, so stick around for that. I look forward to honoring you as fathers. Of course, I'm a father, so this is a special holiday. I also want to say, before we get going, that if you enjoy these videos, please click the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you like the video. If you're watching on Facebook, like the page, like the video. This really helps the cause. And, not to get cheesy, but it inspires me. So I would greatly appreciate it. And I thank you for doing that in advance. Okay, so now we're going to talk about inspiration. To kick off the conversation, I'm going to share a personal story with you that just happened to me and actually got me thinking about having this conversation with you. If you've been following me, you already know some of these details, but if you haven't, I need to say it. So, for most of my adult life, I've been a general contractor. Oh my goodness, I forgot to do that, sorry. Right at the story, I just got to click this button and then we'll get going. Okay, sorry. Most of my adult life, I've been a general contractor. So, probably two and a half years ago, I decided to start branching into this thing that you're actually watching me do here right now. Be an author and a spiritual teacher. I was doing that as I was contracting. I wrote the book, I started the website, I was, mostly done with a course, all kinds of stuff like that, juggling that with a full-time contracting thing. It was probably about 6 months ago that I decided to jump in head first, right? To just go all in. I did that partially because it was so hard to juggle, to reach the level that I was trying to do and all the things I wanted to do. It was really difficult to do that and work full time. So I dedicated myself to this full time. Now, it was about 2 weeks ago, I think that's about right, that I started to experience some technical issues with my website. Now, in order for you to understand the gravity of this situation, you have to understand that it's not just my website. This company hosts my website, my online courses, my membership program, my blogs, the whole thing. It's like all my email sequencing. It's a all-in-one package, which is why I went there with them. And I've been very happy. If any of you have taken the courses and used some of that stuff, I think you know it's a wonderful platform. They do a fantastic job. But I just started experiencing some really weird issues that were increasingly getting worse, like to where it culminated to last week. Last week, I couldn't publish my blog. Now, I don't know, it probably might sound a little silly to you, but I'm not going to lie when I tell you it was very painful for me to not be able to reach that commitment, to fulfill that commitment that I've made to do a weekly blog. My following is kind of small, but I do know that there are people who read it every week and pretty much right away. So I know that's a sacred thing to me. It means a great deal. And when I wasn't able to do that, it hurt, honestly. And, this was coupled with hours. I spent hours and hours and hours, on chat and email, making videos, trying to show them what's going on. And we just couldn't figure it out. I also have to say that, after like we said, 2.5 years, and then 6 months of all in, I've got a long way to go in order to support my family with this new business. So I'm not able to fulfill this commitment that I've made. And I've experienced some inner turmoil over it. Well, I try very hard to be a man who practices what I preach. So I realize that I need some space. I need to take some time away from this, get quiet, and see what's going on. Because the moment I started thinking about this, like even taking the space, very quickly it came to me, hey, you might have to leave this forum. You might have to go to another provider if you can't figure out the situation. And I have to tell you, I was like, whew, once I realized that, I really knew I needed to take some space, because it's a hell of an undertaking. I mean, I have to rebuild my whole website, do all my online courses again, the membership, the whole nine. I realized that I might have to start all over. Now, I know, full disclosure, not all over, right? A lot of the content's there, but it felt that way. And it felt like starting all over for almost nothing, because I still have so far to go before I can make a business of this, to where I can support my family. So I sat with that, and I did pull away, slowed down, did a few things every day, did a lot more meditating, took a lot more time. And I was in this space when I got an email on Tuesday, so it was a couple days later. And it was a notification saying, hey, today's the day that you signed up for the webinar thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had totally forgotten. It was actually hosted by the website provider that I use. Well, I was pretty excited about the event. They had some great speakers and all kinds of educational things. So I decided, I'm going to keep this commitment too, and I joined the webinar. Well, it was probably about a quarter of the way in for the first speaker that I was very happy that I did. And now we're at the point of why I'm sharing all this, because what happened with that first speaker practically right away was she inspired me. She inspired me. She was one of those people, she was one of those, of course, crazy stories where she went all in, her and her husband quit their jobs, started this whole thing. They went years with nothing until they finally, 10 years later, they sell their business for $1.2 billion, right? You're like, whew. Now, I really don't care that much about the $1.2 billion, though. It's a very big number. It's impressive. Anybody who accomplishes something like that deserves and commands a certain amount of respect, And she certainly got it from me. I mean, I was listening. I was interested. And, mostly what she did in her conversation was to share her hard times, if you will, like all the times, all of the times she was rejected, all the times that things didn't work out the way they thought, how long and how many times they had to jump hoops and hurdles and all that kind of stuff. And she was sharing this one time that was sort of a pivotal moment where they had already, put a ton of money and time in, experienced a ton of failure, you might say. And it was like, okay, but we're going to get to this thing and everything is going to shift from that point. And they get to this thing and, of course, nothing shifts, right? And she said, when I hit a spot like that, I always get very quiet, she said. And I start to pray more. Now, I got a feeling that this woman was probably a Christian woman. She didn't push her views at all or anything. And matter of fact, because she was giving advice while she talked about this, so she was very open in saying whatever works for you, however you do that sort of thing. She said, but then I asked myself, is this really what I want? Is this really important? How important is this to me? So I'm listening to this woman, and of course I was getting tingles pretty much because I was already deep in this process, right? I had already started being quiet and getting space. So I kind of took her invitation and I asked myself, okay, so if you have to start all over again, and even though you're not making anything or hardly anything right now, are you willing to do it? Now, maybe because I had some quiet time, maybe because of her inspiration, I can tell you it was a very easy answer. It was a yes. It was an absolutely yes. I'm still all in. Now, part of that is because I felt this calling all my life. I mean, that's probably an exaggeration. When I was playing with, toys when I was 5, I wasn't thinking about this. But right around 14, I've cited this many times, I experienced a shift in my life. I had an awakening. And at that moment, I knew that what interested me more than anything else, actually, and more than most people around me, were these deep spiritual concepts, right? These deep spiritual realities that I felt were realities. And that was awoken in me at the age of 14, almost 15. And it never left me. So that is the reason why I knew. I think when I went back inside and I'm looking, I'm thinking about this big picture thing, it was very easy for me to make the choice. And it came from this woman inspiring me. Now we're going to get into the conversation of inspiration. And we're going to jump right into, where does it come from? Well, if you look at the root word to inspire, it actually is, I should have looked it up again because I can't do the Latin or whatever it is, but it is spirit actually. It's the root word, right? In spirit. And spirit actually means to breathe life into. This gives me tingles again because it actually goes back to the last live stream. I don't know if anybody saw it. If you remember, I talked about how come I love religions, because they have a great way of offering up these metaphors and these things, and with, God breathing life into man. Inspiration is very much like that. She breathed new life into me. She inspired something. She sparked something. But what is often missed about inspiration is it's easy to look at that person and think that they're giving you something. But the truth is, it was already within me. And it's already within you. Whenever you get inspired, I don't care if it's a song, if it's a book, if it's a movie, if it's a teacher, if it's a video, it's not coming from that thing outside of you. They're actually just sparking something already existing in you. It's like a potential. A very common way to talk about this in spiritual circles is it's like a block of wood, right? It has potential, but it's just sitting there until it gets set aflame, until it gets life breathed into it. Can you see the breathing into it? It already exists. A way I can prove this to you is because there's plenty of things that don't inspire you, so to speak, right? There's plenty. If I was saying something to you right now that wasn't inspiring you, that you could care less about, it would almost be as if I was speaking Chinese and you don't speak Chinese, right? There would be no place in you for it. It's only because it already exists within you, and then somebody says something to spark it, to breathe life into it, that you get inspired. The reason that this is really important to understand is it doesn't come from outside of you. It's useful to have these things outside, to breathe some air into some fresh air into us, right? To spark us. But it's more important to realize that when you feel that, that's just an awakening of your own inner nature. You carry this with you all the time. This is part of acknowledging this, understanding this, getting in touch with this. Even as you're being inspired, to feel that, to realize that that's just something awakening. That's just a potential, stirring in me. My potential, not theirs. And it's actually another wonderful part about this, the spirit part, the in spirit, is the reason that happens is it's a shared thing. So in other words, that person has it too, obviously, and they're sparking it, they're breathing life into it in you. It's a place of unity that I'm always talking about. When you're inspired, that's what you're feeling. So that's where it comes from. Of course, we could go on and on and on, but we're going to go into some other aspects because there's actually quite a bit to cover about inspiration that's useful to know and to help in the how to stay inspired. The next thing, so that's the first thing, that you carry inspiration within you. The next thing is that inspiration isn't just the inspire you to be better kind of inspiration, inspire you to grow, inspire you. Inspiration comes in all forms. It goes both ways, so to speak. It goes both ways in many ways. We'll get into this. But what I mean by it at first is you can be inspired to hate. You can be inspired to get fearful, to be fearful. You can be inspired to get angry. This happens actually probably more often than the latter, than the inspired to grow and the inspired to open and the inspired to love. Inspiration is always happening. This is the point. I don't know if you can see that. That's what I'm saying when I say that. It's always happening. And the two, it goes both ways thing means that it can be empowering and disempowering. And it also means that you do it as well as you receive it, right? So this comes back to that concept of resonance. Like, we're always giving off a certain energy, a vibration, right? All of us are. Everything is. And so you're receiving it all the time. You're being, this kind of life energy is being breathed into you all the time. So if this is true, which I think it's probably not that hard for you to see that there's a lot of truth here, it becomes a matter of where do you place your body, your mind, and your heart. It's very important to pay attention to what are you surrounding yourself with? What are you exposing yourself to? Because whether you want it or not, you're receiving inspiration. So it becomes incredibly important to pay attention to what it is you're surrounding yourself with. It, as the saying goes, you are who you hang around with, right? Is a certain way of saying this. And it's every great spiritual teaching always has a moment where it talks about that because it's incredibly important. The other thing about it goes both ways is, well, wait a minute, okay, but I want to inspire. And that's fantastic. That's a wonderful, impetus inside of us to want to do that. And it's an important thing. And as I say, you're already doing it. But be careful in thinking too quickly, especially, that you can lead the inspiration parade, so to speak, right? Because here's the thing. We're blocks of wood, right? There's potential in us. And if you notice, there's potential both ways. All our potential isn't just for love and peace and joy, right? We actually have these other things in us. I think we all can be honest enough with ourselves to realize that. So, who wins, if you want to say that, right? Who's burning brighter? That's the question that comes, like, if that person walks in the room and they got a really negative energy, is it going to overpower you? Well, the way I would put this, actually, I put this in the blog that I'm writing right now, is if you set something next to a bonfire or in a bonfire, it burns it without effort, right? It doesn't matter what you put there, pretty much. It'll consume it. But a candlestick, not so much, right? It's much more fragile. Well, the truth is we all want to be bonfires, and that's a wonderful desire. That's a wonderful something to aspire to. But the other truth is most of us are still candlesticks, which is just to say that we need to nurture this flame within us before we give it away too much, right? Another way that I always talk about this is, like, we want to help people. In a very silly kind of gross way, let's equate it to money. If somebody needs to borrow $50, you better have $100 in order to lend that. You don't want to deplete yourself completely. You'll be no good after that. You'll be no good to yourself or anyone else, right? It's the same sort of thing. In order to build yourself to a place where you are inspiring, which you don't even need to try to do. Once your flame is burning hot enough, you start to set people near you on fire. This is the beautiful part about it, right? But in order to do that, you usually need to take care of it, to respect it and honor it wherever it is. We're all in different places, right? And we're all in different places at different things. Like, there may be things in your life that you rock at, right? And you're really good at inspiring people with that. And then there's other things that you really want to be good at, but you're still learning. It's important to honor that and cherish that flame. And here's the next thing, right? If you know this thing that you want to become a bonfire, how do you get there? Well, one of the best ways is to find something or someone who's burning hotter than you, and then set yourself next to them. Does this make some sense? Because by doing that, you're going to get inspired, right? You're going to get more life breathed into you. It's going to feed your flame, not deplete it. This is really important as we grow, as we start to move and develop, as I like to say, into higher realms. You need to find that someone or something, or combination of those things, right, that burn brighter, that hotter than you. This is that conversation we had too when I talked about development as far as like helping people, like some of the stuff that's going on with Black Lives Matter and all that. If you want to help, get yourself up that developmental level or ladder, and you'll be pulling people up naturally. This is how it works. This is that resonance thing. And once you do that, when it gets hot enough, you're not even trying that hard. You're just there. It's just happening. And it's a wonderful place to be. So now we've talked about where it comes from. We've talked about the importance of placing yourself in a situation or around the people or the person that ignites you, that gets you. How do you know which is the right inspiration, so to speak? This would be the next question, at least as I think about this and think about sharing. This is the natural step. Okay, great. I see that this is always happening, that it comes from within me. It's not actually coming from outside of me as much as it seems. How do I know how to choose the proper place to set myself, right? This is a good question. This is a big, important question. It's one of those good news, bad news things again, right? It's actually easy to answer in my mind, and I hope you can see the wisdom here when I share it. But simple doesn't always mean easy, right? So I'm going to give you a way to gauge it. The simplest way that I can explain to you how to discern the best inspiration. Now, actually, I'm almost jumping the gun here. So much of this depends on what you actually want. I can't say what you want. But if you're watching this video and you're following any of my stuff, I'm pretty sure that you're at least interested in the three pillars I'm always talking about, which is freedom, peace, and joy. If you're interested in freedom, peace, and joy, here's the litmus test to help you find out who's going to help you, who's going to inspire you, who to set yourself near. Or what. Like I said, it doesn't just have to be a who, obviously. It's the book, it's the music, it's the right movie, the right videos. There's so many things, right? You gauge it by paying close attention to what causes your heart to open or what causes it to close. If you want to experience freedom, peace, and joy, your job, if you want to call it that, is to work on opening your heart. The more open you are, the more you're going to experience these things. Now, this is why I said it's not necessarily easy. Open doesn't always feel good, actually. Sometimes closing down feels pretty damn good. It feels like you're protecting yourself, like you're safe. And being open can feel very vulnerable, is the word I love to use, right? It can feel unsafe. It can feel uncertain. But if you want to experience joy, peace, and freedom, you need to work on opening your heart. The more you open, the more you're going to experience these things. It took me decades to realize this. It's taken me a good solid decade of kind of already knowing it, but then getting it to be understood deeper and deeper, and I'm still learning. I realize all the time, more and more. Part of what I just shared with you in the beginning was me having to open more. You know, you want it to be over, you want it to be done, you want to have the website set up and move on and start making some money and keep doing your thing, and what if you can't? Can you stay open? Can I stay open? This was part of the questions I had to ask myself. Now, shutting down would have meant, no, I don't think I can do it, right? But I'm willing to stay open because I know from experience the power that lives in that opening. You know, one of the simplest ways that I love to try to express why it's so important and useful to be open is you're not going to be able to see reality for what it is unless you're open. If you're closing down, if you're limiting your perspective, if you're limiting your ability to look, to be open, then you're going to limit your ability to respond. This is part of why open and freedom go hand in hand. You can't actually make free choices unless you can see it clearly enough. Does that make sense? It's so incredibly important. This is also where inspiration becomes important again, right? Because I am freely admitting that open is not always easy. This is another reason why it's really important to find that person, to find that thing that helps breathe new life into you, that keeps you alive like that, right? That keeps you inspired, that keeps you on fire when you're trickling out. That's what that woman did for me in the webinar right away. It was so beautiful, right? My energy was ebbing a little bit, right? I was wasn't sure. I was sitting in this place of uncertainty. And then she helped breathe new life into me, and I'm very grateful to her for that. I hope you can see the importance of what I'm sharing. Inspiration is an incredibly powerful thing. The thing about it, as we say, to recap in that way, is you have to remember that it's always happening. This is a very challenging thing too, by the way, because sometimes what this means is we have to sever that tie. We have to distance ourselves from this thing. I don't even mean a person necessarily, right? For me, which I'm going to share in a minute, I'm going to share another story, a Father's Day story. For me, there was a moment where I had to sever my tie from drinking alcohol. It was absolutely necessary. And it was a big part of my life. So as you can probably imagine, it wasn't very easy. It wasn't very comfortable. It wasn't very fun. But it was incredibly important, and it caused a trajectory shift in my life that you're experiencing right here and right now. The ripple effect of that. So honor the power of inspiration. Realize that it comes from within you, but then set yourself around the things that you want to grow and nurture. Because the things that are around you, the things that you put your focus on, the things that you expose yourself to, have an influence on you, inspire you, whether you want them to or not. This is everything, by the way. This is social media, this is news, this is music, this is movies, this is the people in your life, of course, right? This is your circumstances, like in other words, do you got a lot of debt? Do you got a lot of, do you have issues with other things? Like these things are having an influence on your life. You need to honor it. You need to position yourself in the way that leads to freedom, peace, and joy, to an opening of your heart, not a closing down. Opening of our hearts is what we need as human beings. So I'm going to invite you to ask questions, by the way, if anybody has any questions, because I'm gonna do a little Father's Day tribute here now. I'm going to do that by sharing a story quickly, and then, segueing into a Father's Day salute. And this gives you some time to think of a question if you have it. It also gives you time to hit the like button. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you're enjoying this. Please like the Facebook page if you're on Facebook. I greatly appreciate it. You are adding to my level of inspiration every time you do it, okay? So, I expressed on Mother's Day that it's probably my favorite holiday. And that's because my mother's very dear to me, obviously, and it's because of the gift, and it doesn't even do it justice, that my mother gave to me in my childhood. Father's Day is not necessarily my favorite holiday, and it's not because of my dad, really. It actually has much more to do with what I'm about to share with you. Probably the worst, or one of, had quite a few, one of the worst moments of my life happened on a Father's Day. But strangely enough, as you'll discover, it was one of the best moments of my life in a strange way. I think it was 13 years ago. It was Father's Day. My wife and my 3 kids were doing their best to honor me. My inner world at that time in my life was a mess. Let's just put it simply, right? Now, I had been doing spiritual work for a long time. As I expressed, at 14 years old, I was interested in spiritual things. I had done all kinds of stuff. And at this point, I'm in my 30s. And, I had done lots of spiritual work, but I was still struggling. I'm not going to get into the details of what happened because that would probably bore you. And they're not really necessary, except to say that I was so wrapped up in my own inner world and my own feelings that I couldn't acknowledge that my family was honoring me. I was wrapped up in my own petty things. And I made sure that everyone around me knew that I wasn't happy, that I wasn't being honored in the way that I wanted to be honored. It was a shameful, disgraceful day that when I woke up the next morning, I could barely look at myself in the mirror. It actually took years probably before I could look at myself in the mirror. And actually look at myself. It was actually a practice I did after a while because I realized I had an issue there. It hurt to look myself in the eyes. And there are many reasons why that is, but this Father's Day was one of them. When I woke up, I decided I am never having another day like that again. Now, that's not because that was the first one. I had had a lot of them. But this was the one, this was the straw, right? The straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. It was the bottom, as they say in 12-step programs, right? Here's what I want to share with you if you are a father. If you have a father who's struggled or struggling. I'm grateful for that day. It was a painful day. It lives still within me when I think about some of the specific things that I remember from that day. It hurts to this day. But I'm grateful for it. Because I realized that it didn't have to be that way. So here's what I want to share. Some of what I'm about to say, too, is a little stereotypical, meaning that not every father goes through these things, but lots of us do. I worked a ton back then. A lot of times when I came into my house, I felt like a stranger because I was hardly ever there, right? I had almost no connection with my kids. No, that didn't feel real or authentic. It was kind of stressed and strained. I was always tired. There was always other things to do, right? I worked 70 hours a week and then there's things around the house to do, right? It was very challenging. The busyness of life put strains in the financial issues, put strains on my marriage, and, nothing seemed easy, especially when I was at home. Work always seemed a little easier, even though it was very hard and challenging. It was easier in a way. I felt more at home at work. I did it more. Sometimes I felt like a stranger in my own house. And it was a painful place to be, like that feeling. And I didn't know what to do about it. That Father's Day that I took a shift, I stopped drinking. That was the thing. That was the first thing. And that was a big thing, actually. And that helped me do more things. But most of everything else I did after that were very little things. This is part of what I want to share with you. We always think that the changes we need to make need to be massive. They actually don't. They need to be done consistently, though. Pick a small thing and do it consistently. That's what I did. One thing at a time. One thing, I mastered one little thing, right? Come home, read to the kids. As an example, was something that I did, right? Every night, whether they want me to because they never did, or I want to or not. It was a strange thing. It was a strain thing. Like it was a struggle sometimes because I was exhausted. They didn't want to do it, so why am I doing it? Right? This is a silly example, but doing that one thing, then the next thing, little things, staying consistent, changed my life, changed my relationship to my wife, to my children, and probably most importantly, to myself. So if you struggle as a father, don't worry. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel bad about it. Just do something about it. Small. Don't try to change everything overnight. I remember I used to do that all the time. Like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And of course, it never lasted, right? It was much easier to pick one small thing. The biggest thing that you could do as a man, as a father, because most of us as men struggle with this, is to hear what I said about choosing things that open your heart. being vulnerable as a man is very challenging because it feels weak. It feels like weakness. But I want you to know, I hope that you're listening to me. Vulnerability is anything but weakness. It takes a tremendous amount of strength and power to be willingly vulnerable. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you access that place, it will improve your relationships with your kids, with your wife, with your father, with your friends. This is my wish for you. If you don't struggle in this way, I'm preaching to the choir, fantastic. Your relationships can be even better, can be even deeper. So I encourage you to open your heart even more. There's no end to it. I keep going, and actually it always, whenever my heart opens more, it's always that little bit of strain, or I don't want to say stress, that's not the right word, but you can feel the stretch. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You can feel it opening, and it's a little uncomfortable, but the benefits are amazing. So I want to honor you as a father today and say Happy Father's Day and encourage you to open your heart, because that is your sacred duty as a human being, but certainly as a father. And I thank you for taking on that sacred duty. I don't know if we have any questions or comments or anything. Fantastic. That's great. As always, I want to thank you for your time. It's precious.